Oh, is it too old?
It's Baseball at the Corner. This is the Michigan in Trouble podcast with your hosts, Alex S. Freeman and Luke Jaconis.
Hello and welcome to the Michigan and Trumbull podcast. I'm Alex Freeman, joined as always by Luke Jaconis. Luke from school, how you doing this week?
I am good. Thank you. Thank you very much for, I almost said thank you for having me. That'd be funny, but I guess thanks for having each other. We have each other's backs.
Every week, here we are, through thick and thin.
We're family. If the Fast and the Furious taught us, if the Fast and the Furious movies have taught us anything, it's that we're family. So thank you. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. A little note for our listeners. We are recording this show early, so if you came screaming to your podcast feeds on Monday morning to try and hear our thoughts on the latest breaking news over the weekend, we don't have it because we're not omniscient and we don't know what happened. So
it's true.
We are recording early. We're recording on just to timestamp it for you. We are recording on St. Patrick's Day.
I look at the Irish.
Season preview-ish episode. It's kind of going to be a two-part season preview. This week, we're going to focus on the Tigers, sort of the first month of the season and what that's going to look like. Next week, we'll be joined by resident A's fan Tom to do our season preview, look a little bit wider at Major League Baseball. So as we get ready to finally turn the calendar over to April and watch some real live competitive baseball that isn't spring training.
Sorry, I was taking some of my water there. Boy, I'm out of it right now. I'm a little disoriented. I gotta wake up. I gotta wake it up. Right. I'm gonna wake it up right now. You said something about breaking news. You don't want to talk about the biggest sports news that occurred yesterday. I noticed you just glossed right over that. Andy Dalton of the Bears, 1 year, $10 million, I think it was, or $8 million. I don't remember.
You're personally underwriting those paychecks, right, Luke?
Yeah, something like that.
You wanted this deal to happen so badly.
It is. I mean, this is such a Chicago Bears move. I can't even begin to describe it. And I have a lot of different thoughts on it. Obviously, we're not a football podcast, so I won't go into full detail. But I will say this: if not that really the majority of our listeners are Bears fans, I know we are definitely a Detroit-based podcast, which makes sense considering what our name is and what we cover. But even if someone who just casually knows the Bears, this is so on brand for them. So on brand for them. They make all these big, they make big, kind of BuzzFeed articles saying like, oh, we're going after Deshaun Watson. We're going after Russell Wilson. And who do they end up with? Carrot Top's brother. That's who they end up with. They got Andy Dalton. And
Luke, I have to ask you to not insult Carrot Top like that.
Oh, wow. See, thank you. Yeah, no, Andy Dalton, I'm sure would be an absolute fine backup. But here's the thing. Now they already have like two Andy Daltons, or you can look at it as they have two Nick Foleses because they've got Nick Foles and Andy Dalton on the roster. Now, some people are saying maybe we'll try to ship out Nick Foles and then do a draft pick, and it'll be kind of, one of those things. We'll see. It's just bad. Just so bad. Not Russell Wilson. We all wanted Russell Wilson, and it's not Russell Wilson. Not that Russell Wilson may not come to Chicago at some point in time. But as it stands right now, looks like it's not happening. Also, I'm not going to hold my breath on him ever coming to Chicago because the Bears just never can get it right with QBs. I don't know. It's just like the Tigers in their bullpen. They just can never seem to get it right.
Have the Bears considered calling Kristen Stewart to come be the quarterback?
I don't know, Alex, but I'm going to be honest with you, buddy. I love this segue you're doing. So why don't you take us down that yellow brick road there?
Yeah, series of cuts being made. Obviously, there will probably be some more cuts between the time we recorded and by the time this episode drops. But the biggest one this week so far has been Kristen Stewart being optioned down to Toledo. We talked off the air, Luke, a little bit of how this feels like probably the end of the road for Kristen Stewart, at least definitely in this organization. They may, if he is having a good year at Toledo, they may be able to package him into a deal and move him somewhere to somebody that is looking for some utility help in the outfield. But I don't know. I don't know that there's a good landing spot for him. It is unfortunate because we don't dislike Kristen Stewart. We have been pretty hot on Kristen Stewart at times on this podcast, but he is, it's a crowded outfield with the myriad of signings and moves and sort of the spring training that Akil Badu is having. There's just not space for a guy like Kristen Stewart.
Absolutely. It's unfortunate about Kristen Stewart too, because he was, as I think I said on last week's episode, he was like the first big prospect that I remember of like this new crop of this quote unquote rebuild to kind of make his debut back in 2019. And I think we said on last week's episode too, had a hell of a start in the 2019 season, had that go ahead home run. And then he had that go ahead grand slam against the Royals, like in the first week or two of the season. So everyone was like, all right, Kristen Stewart. And that was pretty much it. So it was definitely in his case, not with a bang, but with a whimper. Whimper. Oh my goodness. Yikes. Bear with me, folks. It's going to be a long show. But yeah, so it is what it is. You said it perfectly as well. The outfield is so crowded right now, based on guys who are already previously there, based on the guys that they brought in, based on the prospects that they still have lurking in the minors, and yes, based on Akil Badu, who's having a hell of a spring training. I don't think anybody saw this coming. He's physically made his way to be like, yeah, you guys are going to keep me, or otherwise I'm going to go back to the Twins and torment you for years to come, kind of thing. So it's just a crowded outfield, man. I think we talked about that one of our first episodes back this season was kind of the log jam in right field. It's not so much, it's still a log jam, quote unquote, but it's not so much of a question as who's going to be the starter. It's definitely going to be looking like it's Nomar Mazara, since they went out and signed him, kind of took a flyer on Nomar. But yeah, it's just there wasn't a landing spot for Kristen Stewart, and I think not only is his overall tenure with the Tigers in question, I think his baseball kind of tenure is now under the microscope too. And I don't mean to be overly dramatic with that, but he's had opportunities. That's the thing with Kristen Stewart. I think he got called up, I want to say late 2018, and then he was the full-on everyday starter in 2019. Not a great year there. 2020, we know, with COVID, and then they just not having a good spring. It was just, he had the opportunities. He's on the complete opposite side of a guy like Derek Hill, who I actively have been like, when are we going to give this guy a shot? Derek Hill, I still don't feel like he's getting much of a chance, whereas Kristen Stewart has been given multiple chances, and I don't think he's probably performed as well as he should have, which is why he's in the position that he's in currently. But it's unfortunate, like you said, Alex, you both were fans of him. And, maybe he goes down there, gets real hot, and he forces AJ Hinch's hand to call him back up. And if so, that's fantastic. We are rooting for the guy. But I just think it's looking pretty doom and gloom for him. And as we said, there's a lot of outfielders coming out of last season into this year. And we lost Troy Stokes after the injury last year, never even saw him. Bonifacio gone. Travis DeMeritt is gone. And now Kristen Stewart gets designated. And also Derek Hill was designated as well. But I would say not that it is much better, but at least his future is a little bit brighter, because I did read an article today saying that AJ Hinch says he fully expects him to be back up with us sometime in the 2021 season. So
yeah, it's one of those that I think combination of injuries and making space for Akil Badu just kind of worked out that it's not going to be Derek's moment yet, but he's not written off in the same kind of way. Let's talk about Akil Badu, because there obviously have been some articles floating around that have been like, making the Tigers make a tough decision. It doesn't feel like there's actually a tough decision around Akil Badu. It's just, make the roster space. He's the fifth, sixth guy. That's you're not gonna let him leave the organization, which is what would happen if you don't let him on your roster. Yeah. And so are the Twins planting those stories? Like, where are those stories coming from? That's what I want to know.
Maybe. No, that's a good point. Badu, man, talk about a heck of a debut, really kind of taking the most of what you're given, taking your opportunity that you're given and running with it. So I think he definitely is the fifth outfielder at this point. And maybe even make an argument he's the fourth outfielder. That's probably a bit presumptuous on my part, because I feel like the organization is very high on Victor Reyes, a guy who, once again, I'll always admit, at first wasn't a huge fan of Victor Reyes when he came up. Also, we got him in a Rule 5 as well.
Yeah, also a Rule 5 pick. So,
and he's kind of made the most of his stay. Well, I think every year Victor Reyes has gotten a little bit better and better, which is great. So we'll see. It's going to be, realistically, we're going to have potentially 6 outfielders on the roster with Mazara, Jones, Grossman, if Badu makes it, Victor Reyes, and Nico. And then also they're talking about Harold Castro too, getting some outfield reps. So potentially 7 different outfielders going to be on the roster. And then they obviously will have some luxury with Nico and Harold because they can definitely play all over the infield as well. So we'll see.
And that was one thing
I feel like
that AJ was talking about recently as well, was the fact that he really likes utility guys that can plug into any spot, and that jives with everything that we know he's been saying about how he likes to think through the game, that he's going to put the hot hands in and he's going to put them in the spots to win. And if that means we got someone over the course of 8 games plays 8 different positions. Not that I expect any of these utility guys to catch, but who knows? They probably can.
Brandon Hinge did it. He started as catcher, third base. They tried him in the outfield. They played Hinge all over the diamond. So if Akil Baddoo makes the team, I mean, obviously it's either he makes the team or he goes back to Minnesota. It's pretty cut and dry. So let's assume he makes the team. He's with the Tigers going into this season. Does this pretty much then, we would assume, seals Isaac Paredes' fate as for not making the team out of camp? Because, I mean, who else would they go unless they dropped the pitcher and kept 5 outfielders, 3 infielders, 3 utility infielders at that?
Yeah, I think that's the calculation right now, is if they want to potentially lose maybe a guy in the bullpen, or go to not to do the 6-man rotation that they have kind of like talked about. It could be one of those situations as well that you start Casey down again. You start Casey Mize down, and don't have him make the opening day roster. And that maybe frees up the spot. I mean, there's like optionality, but I would guess that this means that Isaac, who is not having a bad spring by any stretch of the imagination, but is not having the same kind of breakout spring as some of these other guys, that may mean he starts in Toledo this year.
Yeah, and I think right now, I know we kind of touched on this on last week's show, but I think Casey's definitely going to start down in Toledo this season, and I'm okay with that. Honestly, he's had just a little bit of, again, little struggles, nothing to freak out over. I always laugh when I see people on Twitter or Instagram or on Tigers Facebook freaking out over Casey Mize that they blew a draft pick and blah blah blah. People, shut up. We have barely seen what the kid can do. He had a couple starts last year in a weird ass COVID season. He got roughed up last week against the Phillies. Like, just shut up and let the kid do his thing. It's just that's the stuff I don't have the patience for with really any sports fan. And when you're just berating a prospect before they even had a chance to prove themselves. And so it's okay to be, make note of that he's had struggles. It's okay to say that, but that he's not going to pan out. Come on, folks. Come on. Let's get with it. But I do think that Casey, given where he's at developmental wise, will start in AAA this year. And I would also be willing to bet that we will see him 100% back in Detroit sometime this season. So it's as simple as that.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting how the delayed start to the AAA season factors into some of these decisions of if the work that they need to do can be accomplished through inter-squad, which a guy like Casey, I think it can be, because it's really more about working on command. It's about working on those, and then the next step will be adjusting him to the pressure of the big league game, but he wasn't really going to get that in a AAA game anyway. Yeah. Not the same kind of, he's not in the show at the moment. So, I think that it's going to be an interesting calculation as it comes down to it. But I don't think there's a world where Akil Baddoo doesn't make this roster.
I would be shocked if he didn't.
And whatever that kind of means in terms of Isaac versus where those guys go.
Yeah. And also another big name that didn't make the team out of camp was Matt Manning. Now that was obviously kind of expected. I would have, I would have maybe liked to see them kind of taken a flyer and just let see how he does. But, right now it really doesn't probably make logistical sense to have him up. Again, a guy we're going to see this year. So it's not like we're never seeing these guys again. We're going to see them in the not too distant future. So I'm not worried about that. And, it is what it is. And there have been some guys who have had, fairly decent springs on the pitching side. So I thought it was relatively competitive. And there's, camp still isn't over yet. So anything can happen, I suppose, but it is what it is.
Now, Luke, do you think we will see Matt Manning in the first half of the season or the second half of the season?
Oh, that's a good question.
Barring injury or whatever, like flu.
Yeah, for Matt Manning, I'll say we see him in the second half. I think if it comes down to who gets a call up first, Matt or Casey, Casey will get the call up first, just because he's got more big league experience, albeit only 5 or 6 games, but experience nonetheless. And I think Casey would get. Again, this is a total. Maybe this is a bold prediction. We could put this in our little show notes. I think we see Casey Mize back making a start with the Tigers by June. Is that even that bold, really? I mean, that's over a quarter of the way into the season by the time June rolls around. That's really not that bold. Bold would be if I said he'd be in the rotation by the end of April. That would be bold, because then something has really gone awry with the rotation.
Something has really happened.
Either someone's got drastically hurt, or the rotation has just completely fallen apart. So we can't count that as a bold prediction. I'll just say I wouldn't be surprised if we see Casey Mize back with the team towards the tail end of the first half, maybe around the All-Star break, end of first half All-Star break, going into that break.
Awesome. Well, we'll use that as our transition into the meat and potatoes of the show, which is a little bit of a schedule preview. We're going to kind of dive into particularly April in conversation, but we will touch on the rest of the first half of the season. Absolutely. A few like benchmarks for folks to remember as we talk about these teams. The Tigers went 23-35 in 2020. New statistic that I discovered recently in my research was actually paying attention to the Pythagorean record that Baseball Reference puts together, which is about hits allowed and hits that you get. And the Tigers finished exactly on their Pythagorean predicted record. So that is what they should have done. It's essentially Baseball Reference's way to determine if a team got lucky or if they were good. And most of these teams, unfortunately, were who we thought they were. And the Tigers were who we thought they were in that sense. So that they finished 5th in the American League Central, as many may have hoped to forget. And heading into today, the Tigers were 7-8 in spring training. I must admit, I did not look up the score.
They lost today 2-0. I think
7-9.
What's that?
They are 7-9 then.
Yeah, so I know they lost today. Again, we're recording on St. Patrick's Day, and I know today, I think Tarek Skubal got the start. I think he had 6 strikeouts. I think he had 3 walks, 6 strikeouts, and I want to say he went 4 innings. I believe the person who gave up the runs was Joe Jimenez. So.
Oh, good.
That's
good.
Yeah.
That's what you
always want, Joe.
Well, I don't like surprises, so that's nice. For those, and also, in some research today, I was looking at some numbers that talked about how do spring training records correlate to regular season records in their predictive ability. And so if 1 is it predicts perfectly and 0 is there is absolutely no predictive ability, it lands at 0.15. So not particularly predictive. However, the season prior's record correlates at about 0.55. So we'll talk about both of those numbers as we talk about some of these opponents that we may face, if they are going to be, as good as they were, if we're seeing anything in spring that makes us think that maybe they're not. I definitely have some thoughts that I've shared at this point about the White Sox, so I will probably share them again as we get there. Enough. But the Tigers in April open against Cleveland for a 3-game set. And let's talk about the teams as we go. So we got this this opening series against Cleveland. We get in April, we're going to get everybody in the division once, and we get Cleveland twice. So what are we looking for? Cleveland obviously finished 35-25, second in the AL Central. And this is going to be a theme too. Lost in the American League wild card. And heading into today, 7-9 in spring training. What do we think about Cleveland? Who are they going to be this year?
I'm sure we'll get into more detail about this on next week's episode when we do our predictions. I'm sure I said the same thing on last year's prediction episode. I'm going to say the same thing now. I just feel like at any moment the ship is going to sink in Cleveland. I just feel, but every time I say that, they go out and have a year like last year, they finish second in the American League. I mean, they find a way to win. Now, granted, again, it was the shortened season last year, so in a whole 162, who knows if they would have been able to sustain for that long. But you got to, you have to take what we saw last year into account because we're going off of. So, yeah, I don't know about Cleveland, man. I do know this: they've kicked our asses for many, many seasons. So, yeah, I mean, I'll say it right now: Cleveland, Minnesota, Chicago, and Kansas City. We have to beat them. If you even want a chance at competing for a World Series, you have to beat the teams within your division. The days cannot happen anymore when the Tigers can only sneak out a win or two against Cleveland throughout the entire season. Now, I want to say last year, if memory serves correctly, that the Tigers actually played a little bit better against Cleveland last year. Still not great, but better. I still wouldn't even go as far as to say that they had a winning record against Cleveland. I feel like the only team they had a winning record against last year, or close to a winning record in our division, was Kansas City. But even that could be inaccurate. So don't quote me on that. I vaguely remember them having a couple series against Cleveland where they were playing better. And I want to say they maybe even beat Cleveland one time in like a 3-game series, but I could be wrong on that. So don't quote me. But again, Cleveland, Minnesota, Chicago, all great teams. And I'm going to say this now: do not sleep on the Kansas City Royals. Not that I think that they're going to run away with the division, but I think the days of the discussion of being like, well, who's going to finish last, the Tigers or the Royals? I'm not saying it's going to be us, but I'm also not going to say that it's going to be Kansas City. Kansas City has a hell of a lineup, and we will get to face a Tiger killer in sheep's clothing named Whit Merrifield many times this season. And all that guy likes to do is just be a fun sponge and soak up the fun that any of the Tigers are ever having. Because when he comes to town or when we go to Kansas City, Whit Merrifield has our number. On top of that, they've gone out and got a bunch of other guys. They got Carlos Santana, Jorge Soler, is a beast at the plate. This team can hit, and that's just the fact of it. So pitching wise, I don't know exactly where they're at. I think that might be kind of their Achilles heel, but it's a lineup that can produce. So you can't sleep on the Royals. But overall, it doesn't matter if it's Cleveland, Minnesota, Chicago, or the Royals. You got to be able to find a way to beat the teams within your division, because if you can't beat within your own division, you're never even going to make it to the playoffs. So, here we go. I mean, I guess you could get really lucky if you absolutely sucked against your division, but then dominated against everybody else. But that's a big, big, big if. So why not even worry about that? Just take care of your business within your division. And it's a tall task, because the AL Central is much improved all across the board. I'll even group the Tigers into that. A year or two ago, I think you could make an argument it was the worst division in baseball. Now I think you can really start to make a bold claim that's not quite the best, but I would definitely say you could probably make an argument that's top 3.
Yeah, I think that's very true, and especially as we come into this new season, and it's a 162 game season. It is hard to. I think we'll hear a lot of people reminding folks that baseball is a marathon, not a sprint. But this opening series against Cleveland feels really important for AJ Hinch and these Tigers to make a statement. Not necessarily that they're here to win the AL Central this year, but that they are not going to roll over for anybody. And that's kind of what it always sort of feels like especially a lot of these division games, is that it just get off to a rough start in the first game of the series, and they are not going to battle back into that series. They're just gonna be like, well, all right, eyes on Minnesota, which is the next series. And I just hope that mentality is gone, that we can really, and especially these first two series are at home. You have to win your home series. That is, in addition to winning the division, as you have teams at home, you have to win that series. You can't give up games at home. So you got to go 2-1 against Cleveland in this opening series at home. That sounds silly to say in a 162 game season, that you have to go 2-1 in this opening series. I'm not saying the season's over at that point, but it will set a tone in that moment that I think is really, really important for the Tigers and AJ Hinch and this new coaching staff and this new mentality and Al for his contract negotiations, for them to come out and show fight. If they end up going 1-2, but they lose by a combined 2 runs, that's a different way to think about that series. Depending on how those combined 2 runs happen.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't. It's hard to say. Obviously, you always want to win your first game of the year. You always want to win your first series of the year, and of course, you want to win at home. Well, I mean, what a sweeter way to kind of kick off your season. And yeah, it's good for morale. I'm sure it's good for optics of AJ Hinch is the new guy. Blah blah blah. Realistically, and I don't mean to sound like a pessimist when I say this, Tigers could start off the season 0-3. Does it really matter? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, does it matter? I'm sure to us as fans, we're like, what the hell? Come on, guys! Like we're back to same old Tigers. So I get what you're saying. It's good for public image if they can go out, beat a team like Cleveland, who's had the Tigers numbers for many years. It's great look for AJ Hinch. He's the new guy in town. All that good stuff. That's kind of it's a good overall image, I guess. But if they go out there and get their butts kicked, it's a long, long, long season. And I don't mean to sound like a mope with that, but it's just the fact. Those are just the facts. It's a long season. I want them to go out and win every game. But look, here's the deal. And I know we're going to get into the whole season overall or the whole month overall in just a moment, but this is a tough month. This is. I'll be more curious. Not so much about the first series against Cleveland. Again, of course, you always want to win. You want to win every game. You want to win the first game. That goes without saying. But the overall month of April is challenging for the Tigers because I look at all of their opponents, and there's only one series that I go, okay, yeah, we should be able to take care of business there. But I mean, you just want me to run down these real quick?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So we open home against Cleveland. Then we're home against Minnesota. Then we go to Cleveland. Then we go to Houston. Then we go to Oakland. That's going to be a tough road series to start off your season, no doubt about it. Then we're back at home to finish off the month against the Pirates, against the Royals, and then against the White Sox. So we've talked about Cleveland. We've talked about Minnesota, and then going back to Cleveland. Let's talk about the start of that road trip, though. Going to Cleveland, then going to Oakland. Going to Cleveland, then going to Houston, then going to Oakland. That's tough. That's where you go out and really kind of prove that you're a different team. You go out and get some wins, against a division rival, and you go out to the West Coast and beat up on some 2 really solid teams in the A's and the Astros. Now that would be impressive to me.
Yeah, I definitely think, and it's definitely going to be, an emotional series when they head to Houston for some pretty obvious reasons. AJ Hinch obviously returning to Houston as a manager for the first time since serving his suspension from baseball. And that's going to, be an emotional moment, and hopefully these guys can rise to the occasion as opposed to becoming overwhelmed by those emotions as they go there. But yeah, it's definitely, if they can come out of that road swing and in those 10 games, go 5-5 in those 10 games, I think that's a huge accomplishment, because that's definitely a road swing that we would look at even the team last year and maybe have expectations of 2-8, 3-7, 1-9. And that's definitely, you said it, you nailed it right on the head when you said that, this is a very tough April. But when you play in the American League Central as it is currently built, there's not going to be an easy month. You don't have some of the beat up opponents that exist, and then you add in teams like Houston and Oakland. That are just going to be,
the hard part is too, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, but like even when you look at within our own division, the days are gone of being like, well, if we get our butts kicked by, Minnesota and Cleveland, that's kind of normal. Great. Maybe we can go like 500 against the White Sox, and then we'll sweep the Royals. Like that's not going to happen anymore. All 4 of those teams I just mentioned are some of those teams are great. Some of those teams are very good. And the Royals is a team, I don't know if I'm going to put them at the very good level yet. I will say they are on their way to becoming very good. Again, I got to see what their pitching is. I'm not super familiar off the top of my head, but I just know that lineup. It is a sneaky, sneaky good lineup. So don't sleep on the Royals when it comes to offense.
Now, I will say we could get pleasantly surprised as we head into Houston because I don't know that their roster is much improved from last year, and they were a sub 500 baseball team last year. They went 29-31, which was happened to be good enough for second in the American League West. Which wouldn't that be nice? If below 500 was good enough to finish second in the division. But then they put together a run in the playoffs, and I think that has set a lot of people's memories of them. You know, they ran to the American League Championship Series, but they were a 29-31 baseball team heading into the playoffs, and they're currently 3-9 in spring training. Again, you know, whatever that means, but yeah, remembering that they are a sub 500 baseball team out of last year, so that could be one of those spots where that definitely, with that in mind, is one of those series where you say, yeah, like there is like the allure of the Astros,
and they lost George Springer as well.
The emotion of the moment, but obviously now this is a moment to go in and maybe build a little confidence as you can beat the Astros, win a series on the road for your skipper.
Yeah, I'm more worried about, honestly, if you, and this is not me blowing smoke right now, but I'm more concerned about Oakland. I think Oakland is a scrappy team. They are a very, very, very scrappy team.
Houston, we got to get our compliments about Oakland out of the way this week, so that we don't have them next week.
That's why I said that. Tom's going to listen to this and he's going to just like damn near soil himself because he's going to hear that. But no, I think Oakland is a really scrappy, good baseball team. They always find a way to win, even with a small market, small budget, all that stuff. They always can get it done, which is pretty awesome, honestly, in this day and age with where baseball is. They have to go up against juggernauts every day. And Houston is still a good team. I don't by any means they're just like they're not. You're not going to walk over them, but I think you are onto something there in the sense that maybe these aren't the Houston Astros of 2016 or 2017. Like those years where they were kind of at that status. They've lost a couple of guys. They're not the same team overall. They still got that same core for the most part, but they have lost some pieces along the way. So I don't know. We'll see. I think definitely though, prepare to play the Astros of old. And honestly, to go back to the point you brought up about AJ Hinch and how that'll be emotional, I think that might be emotional, maybe a little surreal. But honestly, I don't think AJ Hinch has to worry about Houston. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't, as far as I'm aware, the Houston fan base is not upset with AJ Hinch.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong on that. I don't really follow the Astros all that closely other than when we play them, but I don't really see why they would be mad at AJ Hinch. I mean, he got them to win a World Series and, everything that happened afterwards happened. It's not like they lost the World Series because of him. It wasn't just him that was acting in that scandal. And if you really look at the totem pole of people, he was more so 2/3 of the way down to the bottom, I'd say. Definitely wasn't at the top, not quite in the middle, but maybe right. He was probably batting sixth, I'd say, sixth or seventh in the lineup in terms of people who should be held accountable. So I don't think that'll be a huge deal for him. I'll be more curious to see how other teams react to AJ Hinch while he's traveling this year. And again, I don't think it'll be a huge deal because they might boo him when he goes out to present the lineup card, but he's not going to get 3 or 4 at-bats a game for them to always do it to him. So if they get their boos out, it'll be before first pitch. And more often than not, people are still getting their beers and hot dogs and getting situated for the game to start when they exchange lineup cards. So that won't be a big deal. Pittsburgh now, that's the matchup we can kind of be like, okay, guys, you got 3 games against Pittsburgh. You're at home. Get the job done. Pittsburgh is going to be a terrible, terrible, terrible team this year. Mm-hmm. You can make an argument, probably going to finish with the worst record in baseball. They are not the Pittsburgh Pirates of old, that is for sure. And you need to take advantage when a team like Pittsburgh comes to town. And you need to go for the jugular. And that's a series where I say, let's go, boys. Get the brooms out and let's sweep. You're not going to, it's going to be hard to sweep teams like the White Sox, teams like the Athletics, or teams like the Twins in the month of April. But a 3-game series at home against the Pittsburgh Pirates, now that's something that's manageable and quite feasible, if you ask me, for this team to do.
Yeah. Pittsburgh 19-41 last year, 5th place in the NL Central, which itself was a surprisingly down division. I think I expected them to be better than they ended up being all last year. Tigers played them 3 times in 2020, swept them on the the season series, the quote unquote season series, the very long season series
Yeah.
of 3 games. I would hope that they do that again in April, that they sweep that series, barring something fluky and weird happening. Because if you're losing to teams like Pittsburgh, you're never going to be competitive in the American League Central.
Well, it's going to be hard overall for the Tigers. I mean, I just think in general the state of competition in baseball is very, very, very high right now. Because the only we would always kind of jump at the calendar when the Royals would come to town. Like, all right, let's beat up on the Royals. And as I said, that's not going to happen this year. But looking even around the league, what are those teams that you can kind of identify as are a beat-up team? Now, I guarantee you, when we come to town, people think we're a beat-up team. No doubt about it. I don't doubt that at all. Now, it's up for the Tigers to change that narrative, to change the approach of teams. Will no longer think that when we come to town because we're here to play. And, we'll only know, as we get into the season if that narrative and that approach has worked or not. But for us, at least, teams that come to town that hopefully we can kind of, get some wins against, I would put obviously the Pirates in April, but let's keep it specifically with American League teams. Probably looking at teams like the Mariners, probably looking at a team like the Orioles, maybe the Rangers, the Angels. On paper, you shouldn't be able to beat up on them, but they always seem to, they have no pitching, so that always kind of happens there. You're not going to really be able to beat up on many teams within our division. Same thing can be said for teams in the AL East if you exclude the Orioles, maybe the Red Sox. It's kind of crazy to say that the Red Sox are going to finish at the bottom again this year, but I think that's going to happen. I think Toronto, Tampa, and of course the Yankees are really going to be the three people leading the division in the AL East. So we'll see. Again, I just maybe mentioned 2 or 3 teams there. So the AL, the American League, is a very, very competitive division. So you gotta get your wins when you can get them. You can't take many games for granted.
Yeah, we then we have Kansas City on the schedule, sort of up next in the order that we've been talking about it, and just they finished 26-34, slightly ahead of the Tigers, which kind of gives you a sense of where they're at in their own quote unquote rebuild, our favorite word. As they, advance, they're slightly ahead of where the Tigers are. Now, I think that the Tigers have assembled some better pieces than Kansas City. Sure, but that's because I'm a Tigers fan and I've paid way more attention to what the Tigers have been doing this offseason than I have to what Kansas City's been doing. And also, Whit Merrifield's still in the lineup. So he's probably going to hit a couple of home runs off of our pitching staff. I don't know what they can do about it except pitch around him.
Yep, that's pretty much all you can do. I want to pull up the Royals roster here real quick, just kind of see what we're looking at. Oh, Hunter Dozier, that was a guy. I couldn't think of his last name. I knew it was Hunter something. Hunter Dozier, they just signed him to, I think, a 2-year or 3-year extension, if I'm not mistaken. But and then they brought in Andrew Benintendi from Boston. Yeah, I mean, this is a team that do not sleep on them. Sal Perez is still there. Jorge Soler. They're gonna be a team. I'm really curious about their pitching. I think that's the one area where maybe we can gain some momentum on them. But then again, the Tigers are in the same boat too. It's not like our pitching is shut down by any means. So we're also in a similar boat in terms of pitching. I would definitely give the nod to their lineup though over ours right now, no doubt about it. But we'll see.
Yeah, it's
gonna be a challenging month.
As we were heading into the 2020 season, we said this a lot, that if these guys can be who we think they are, they can be pretty competitive. And I think that a lot of that is still true. I think that there's better pieces. This overall feels like a better Tigers team than what we had going into 2020, which is all anyone can really ask for, is that the team feels better. Now, this is going to be definitely a great opening month for them to prove that they are a better team than they were last year. Because then they close out the month with the White Sox. And just, the American League Central sent in the expanded playoffs 3 teams to the playoffs. And that's 60% of the division. However, all 3 of them lost in the wild card round, which is unfortunate. But 35-25, the Chicago White Sox, currently 4-8 in spring training. Kansas City's 12-4 in spring training right now. They're having a great
Don't
spring.
Sleep on them. Yeah, I think. One thing I haven't really even mentioned a team that we're going to see earlier in the month, and that's the Twins, because I know the Twins are going to be good. I won't be surprised if the Twins win the division and or win a wild card and get into the playoffs. That's great. Even if they do that, they're not winning the World Series. The Twins, I don't think, have won a playoff game. I think they're like 0-17 in their last playoff games or something like that. It's a crazy statistic that popped up after this last postseason with them. So honestly, they're wasted space when it comes to getting into the playoffs. They just take up a spot from someone who could maybe get hot and run it back all the way and run it to a World Series championship, so to speak. But yeah, I won't be surprised if the Twins dominate in the regular season. Come postseason, I need to see it to believe it, because all I ever see the Twins do in the postseason is make an early exit. So it's as simple as that with them. The White Sox are more intriguing, definitely. And
I've said it before. I think that the current White Sox experiment is going to fail miserably. And at least for the first half of the season, they're going to be having a rough go of it. Now, do they get it together after the All-Star break and make a run? That seems possible, that they could figure out a way, that the young guys could figure out a way to work with the old manager, and they can figure out something that works, and then they can get hot, and then they can make that run. I don't think that they're going to be, out of it at the All-Star break by any stretch of the imagination. But are the White Sox going to be below 500 at the All-Star break? That seems entirely possible to me.
Didn't you say that we'll have a better record than the Tigers by the All-Star? Or not?
Yeah.
Better record than the Tigers. Won't the Tigers have a better record than the White Sox by the All-Star break? Was that a bold claim you have on record?
Yeah, I think that the Tigers will be ahead of the White Sox in the standings at the All-Star break. I don't know that it will be true at the end of the season, but I do think
All-Star break. Yeah, that's a
at
bold
the All-Star
claim.
break. I think that they'll be right there, because I think that this team can certainly, even if they have an identical record, they might be above them on the table based on the head-to-head. Because I think that the Tigers will be in a better position to win against the White Sox than the White Sox will be against the Tigers for at least the first part of the season.
I have a bold claim that by week 3 of the season, the Chicago White Sox will have such a toxic team with Tony La Russa managing and all these young guns who are very good, but also kind of very flashy with how they play, that they will be doing multiple team building exercises and team building retreats on the weekends until the All-Star break. That's my bold prediction.
They'll be going to escape rooms all over Chicago.
Yep. Tony La Russa and Tim Anderson will be doing many, many puzzles and potato sack races, and Eloy Jimenez and Tony La Russa will do drawing pictures, and Jose Abreu and Tony La Russa will be going to see a therapist. It's just going to be something. I am so excited to get to watch that from the sidelines, how that team. Yeah. I almost wish I was back home in the Chicagoland area, because I could watch all the Chicago sports stations coverage of it and get all like the former players and kind of analysts' opinion is in terms of what's going on if this team does not succeed. So we will see what happens there. I think the White Sox are going to be very, 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 very good, though. I mean, it's fun to kind of poke fun at the Tony La Russa and the team chemistry thing, and I think that is actually a legitimate concern that we can have, no doubt about it. But I think they will find a way to get past that, and they will be a team that is to be reckoned with for many seasons to come, not just this year, but many seasons.
Yeah, I'm terrified about what happens after they finally figure it out, but I think that it will look like a disaster for a little bit longer than anyone would want it to as a fan of the organization. And as not a fan of the organization, I'm looking forward to watching it burn for a while.
Yeah, I think it's going to be for the Tigers, though. Overall, it's going to be an interesting month. It's a tough month, as we have both said. It is a tough month schedule-wise and on paper now. Granted, a lot of teams get off to slow starts the first month. A lot of teams get off to hot starts. And then come May, June, the roles reverse. We've seen that happen time and time again in sports. But I think this is going to be a good first kind of test for A.J. Hinch, his coaching staff, and the Tigers. This is not an easy schedule by any stretch of the imagination. So let's see how they do. And I'll be very curious to see how these guys handle it.
So 26. So 26 games in April that we just talked about. Obviously, there is a game on April 30th against the Yankees, but I'm counting that as because the series finishes in May, so I'm not counting that there. But as we come out of those 26 games, Luke, where do you obviously you want the Tigers to be 26-0, but sort of where in their growth trajectory, where do you feel like you need them to be before you are, concerned about this team and the offseason moves that have been made and kind of what that might mean for the future?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm looking something up here real quick for the schedule. So this is a boring answer, but obviously in terms of growth and where will they be as a team, the easy manila answer is to say that they're a 500 team at the end of the year, so they can go out there and win 13 games. If they can be floating around that 500 mark, so anywhere from winning 12 to 14 games in the month of April, I think we could chalk it up as, okay, this was successful. Again, baseball is, as you said, we're going to be saying this a lot, it is a marathon, not a sprint. So really those first 2 or 3 months of the season, is it idiotic to say all you want to do is tread water? I mean, yeah, in theory, it's great if you can be the guy who's leading the parade and you go into the All-Star break with an 11 or 12 game lead. But let's be honest, within the division that we're in, that's just simply not going to happen. Even if the Tigers are a competitive team, there is so much talent within the AL Central that the fact that there's someone who just runs away with it by the All-Star break, I think that's pretty slim to none that will not happen. So maybe what the Tigers just need to do if they really want to try to make a run at it this year and be that competitive team is just tread water for a little bit. Be in and around 500. A few games when you're over, then you lose a couple, then you're back over. Maybe that's the strategy. Of course, you'll want to win every game, but unless this team really surprises us and shocks us, I don't see them being that runaway team in the month of April. So maybe we can be that tread water team in the month of April. Let's be in and around 500. Maybe we win 12 games, maybe we win 14, and we just see how it goes from there.
Yeah, and I think that, I'm going to take this answer and just extend it just a little bit because I agree with everything that you were saying. Is one of the things that the key statistic I'd be looking at there is what the run differential is. Are they getting blown out of games? Are they or are they blowing teams out and losing close games? Because that's much more where you want to land. If you're 500 with a positive run differential, that seems great. That's kind of exactly where you want to be sitting. That you're getting the offense that you need, and occasionally it just, the ball bounces a weird way and you lose one by 1 run. And it's not, the days of just consistently losing 2-0 are behind you because the bats weren't working.
Yeah. No, fair. It's going to be, I'm very intrigued with this season. We've been saying it all off season as we build up to the start of regular season baseball on April 1st for us. There are a lot of fun storylines to watch with this team. Obviously, you have the new coach. You have his new coaching staff that we have raved about. You have lots of young players who are going to be making the team out of camp, some who will be arriving later on in the season. You have guys who are continuing hot starts from last year like Jamer and Willie Castro. And then, of course, you have a future Hall of Famer who's chasing some career accolades. And with that, Alex, and we can put a pin on this specific question that I'm going to ask you for next week's episodes, because I know next week we're going to be talking legitimate predictions and whatnot. So think about this. When will Miggy get to 500 home runs? He's 13 away. When does he do it? Does he get off to a really hot April and May and just do it before the All-Star break? Is it after the All-Star break? Based off his numbers, he hasn't had a real power, home run season in quite some time. I want to say the last time he had a big home run season was probably 2017. If I had to guess on it, because 2018 he was hurt. 2019, he hit like 10 or 11, and last year I think he had 10 and 11 last year. So when does it happen? Think about that and get back to me next week.
Yeah, that's a really great question that I think will be good. And people should tell us in the comments on Twitter.
Yeah.
They should join
what are
us
your predictions?
at @Mish_Trumbull. When does Mickey hit these milestones? When do the Tigers show us who they really are? And am I right that the Tigers will be ahead of the White Sox in the table at the All-Star break? And so as we go through, is just a quick kind of look at the rest of the first half of the season. May brings the Yankees, the Red Sox, and then obviously the division one more time, and also the Mariners are in there and the Cubs are in there. A couple of good series. Then June we've got the Brew Crew. Then the division again, Mariners again, Royals, Angels, Cardinals, Astros, White Sox, Rangers, Twins to get us kind of to the All-Star break. It's not an easy walk. There's only a couple of moments in that schedule that you can kind of circle and be like, okay, there's 4 wins. And that's about how much they add up to. That's not it will be a battle all the way through this American League, because I think that you're right that they're all very, very good. And the level of baseball being played in the American League right now is very high. And it's entirely because of the designated hitter. The National League is silly for continuing to let pitchers bat. I said what I said.
No, it's fair. It's a fair take. It's a fair take. It's a fair take. But yeah, I think like everything you said, it's going to be. Look, not a lot of room for error, right? I mean, we already kind of went down the quote unquote winnable games when those teams come into town and we go play them. It's pretty slim. So this team is going to just have to bring it. That's as simple as that, as cut and dry as I can make it. They're just going to have to step up and bring it.
Yeah. Also, there's that road trip. That road trip just getting out to California is always tough when you do that, because like they go in that when they end at the Angels, it's the end of a 10, 11, 13. It's the end of a 12-day stint of games without a day off, including going. Now they do get to stop in Kansas City to play 3 games before going to play 4 against the Angels. But that's going to be brutal on the guys. Then they get 2 days off before they come play the Cardinals, and that's always going to be fun for personal reasons for both of us when they play the Cardinals. So that'll be a fun little thing in June, and then we get it again towards the end of the season as well. Yeah, it's going to be a good first half of the year. Obviously, I think we've said if we can be at 500 at the All-Star break, I think that's going to be ideal, and we're going to feel really good about where the team is at, because I do think that while they obviously want to win now, they have said it as much that like we have a win now mentality, but obviously acknowledging that it's not quite there yet, that it's not the expectation is not a World Series this year, but the expectation is battling in all of these games. And I think if you're battling in all of these games, then the expectation can be that you're 500 at the All-Star break.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. That's fair. Again, just kind of battling, treading water, whatever analogy you want to use. It's just go out there. We want them to win every single game, obviously, but that's just not going to happen. The talent level is too high, and it doesn't matter how good of a team you are. You're just never going to do that. So go out there, win the games that you need to win. And when it comes time to step up against teams that you need to step up against, do it, especially those teams within your division. Because, again, if you can't beat within your division, you're never going to get a chance to see the playoffs. So start there and see where it goes.
Yeah, and then we'll have quite a second half of the season if these guys are sitting at 500, and we'll have an exciting road through the rest of the year.
That would be
we'll be here every single week.
We will be. We're going to do our predictions next week, and it's going to be a good show. It's going to be a good show. We have to also figure out what we're going to wager for this year. Is it going to be another dinner? Because we still owe Tom his dinner. Now, luckily, we're all going to be together next week, but I don't think we're giving him his dinner then, if I'm not mistaken, because he wants Olive Garden. We specifically did the chain thing.
Yep. So probably not next week, but we'll get it. We'll find it. We'll
get it eventually.
To have the dinner, maybe when we all.
Tom might have 2 dinners to the Olive Garden on the books with us.
I think no matter what happens, Luke, you're gonna owe 2 dinners. That's my prediction.
I think you still owe me you owe me a drink.
I do.
Because didn't we say, because I technically had the right World Series? How did that happen? I had the right World Series, but It was how the hell did that happen?
You had the right winner.
Mm-hmm.
You had the
Oh, I
wrong
didn't.
World
I did. Yeah,
Series.
I think I had Dodgers, Yankees. I had the right winner, wrong World Series, and Tom had both. I think right.
Tom had the correct World Series.
So that's why we both owe him. But I get a half point.
Yeah,
Yes.
you get a drink, which I can
Participation trophies still count.
That's right. It's still a trophy. You still got a trophy.
And since we're going to Florida next week, we're going to be in the Mouse House, all of us, and we know there drinks are expensive. So even like a beer there is going to run Alex about $22. So I'll be getting my fill, folks. Don't worry.
Where my entire stimulus check is going is to pay off
just
this
to feed
wager.
me.
Yeah.
Thank God there's not an Olive Garden on property down there. You would just be
that'd be
you would have to borrow our stimulus checks just to do for a meal.
It'd be like you guys
Garden
come in here and we go to the Olive Garden in Times Square.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That'd be brutal.
Yep. Yeah. Hey man.
But next week we'll have full season predictions. We'll talk about the league as a whole with resident A's fan Tom and Luke. We'll have a good week.
We will. See you soon, buddy.
Have a good one.